the last podcast we did, you mentioned about how Niv Mizzet had 2 5-colour cards.
It's like 4.
And I was like, no, he hasn't. And I looked through this year, I went back over the card gallery, and I was like, oh, fuck. Like, he's got so many fucking cards.
He's had like 4 printings in the last couple of years.
Mad.
Like, so he's got 4 2-colour iterations, and I think 4 5-colour iterations.
I don't think it's 4 5-colour, is it?
It's something very close to that. Niv Mizzet. Scryfall. Because you have the one which is... You have the reborn one, you have the one where you can replicate, or what's it called? Wait 1 minute, let me just...
Hello, precious
3. He's got 4 2-colour and 3 5-colour.
Jesus Christ.
Niv Mizzet Reborn, which is when you look at the top 10, you look for each colour pair, you draw a card. You have Niv Mizzet Supreme, which gives all of your instants and sorceries in your graveyard that are 2 colours jumpstart. And then you have Niv Mizzet Guild Pact, where when it deals combat damage to a player, it deals X damage to any target. You draw X cards, gain X life, and then where X is the number of different colour pairs among permanents you control that are exactly 2 colours. So he's got 3 5-colour guilds-based abilities, and then the 4 2-colour.
Too many.
I know. 7 Niv Mizzets. It's a lot for a big red dragon.
On the 7th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 7 Niv Mizzets, 6 Cracker cards, 5 Tomics, 4 Tasers, and Ralzeric sleeping in a bunch.
That went so unbelievably poorly.
I like it.
Did not start well, did not finish well, and the content was questionable.
Why did I go from 7 to 2?
Exactly, because you sang 7 in the gate of 5. Because it's 5 gold rings we did for 7. So then you were fucked already.
Stand by it. Welcome to Magic the
Good, great.
Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things magic, flavour design, and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
It's that time again. Do you ever do when you sing songs that sound like they're songs, but they're not really songs?
Yeah, I sing song things all the time to people.
That time of year is here.
I sing people's names to them when they come to the venue. Like, if they've got a really cool name.
Our 2024 year review.
Yeah,
Woo!
it's the end of the year.
And I mean, we didn't quite wait till the very end of the year. Last year, didn't we? Really, we did it literally between Christmas and New Year.
Well, there's nothing else happening, ideally, that we know of, apart from, I guess, today there was a banning. There's nothing really happening between now and the end of the year anyway. Like, they snuck Foundations in at the end, did a little kind of, bookend to the year. There's obviously the bannings from today, and then I think that's it. It's now, cool, Innistrad Remastered next year. We are closed for product.
I'm really
finally
hyped for Innistrad Remastered.
We finally got the last secret layer out, the Chaos Vault or whatever. We are at the end of new things that are happening with 14 days left of the year.
And so I think so here we go. So, you know what the deal is. There are many other podcast and content creators that are doing their end of years. We've done end of years in all the years that we've been magicking. So let's look back. Indeed. Maybe our thoughts and feelings have changed. Maybe what we're going to do is we're going to say that we thought one way about a thing. When you actually go back and listen to that episode, we didn't think that thing.
Yeah, the thing about that is that I don't necessarily remember what all of my opinions were.
But you would hope and you would want to trust yourself that whatever opinion you had was sincere enough that you still hold it.
I don't know, I'm fickle as fuck. I'm looking back, I'm like, did I think this before? I mean, I think I'm going to hold true, because usually when we do our set reviews and our story reviews, it's enough back in time that there's been enough time that I don't feel like it's like my initial reaction. And obviously, spoiler season starts so early that usually by the time a set's released, you're kind of like, cool, well, that's done. It's not like this is now a new thing. It's like, no, that's the thing I've already been thinking about for the last 4 weeks. And I guess having a perspective to look at each set now as a whole, with time, part of it, and especially thinking about how many times have I been playing any of these cards in decks, or how many times have I drawn a card and been like, oh, that's really cool, or even thought, oh, I forgot that card had been released, and put it in your little shopping cart 6 months later. That kind of perspective is good. I genuinely forgot which order the sets came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a moment at the beginning of the year when I was going through and without like looking through the timeline. And I was like, okay, well, obviously first thing to come out was Murders of Karlov Manor, but then in my mind, for some reason, Bloomborough came before Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Because one of them sits in my mind more strongly, and the other one has already started to recede, which is very interesting.
They went straight into Hat v Hat.
Yeah, hats versus hats.
Can I just say, right, this year has been so fucking stressful. Like, I know this is a card
really
game,
has.
and we choose to do this podcast because it's our hobby, and, like, we're in the privileged position where we don't even need to earn money from this to live. But, like, this fucking year of Magic has been so fucking stressful because they just won't leave it alone! I'm really upset about it.
Well, let's look at how next year's going to go. It was, I guess, thinking about it, it was the year of tropes, right? Like, everything was either a trope plane or a trope theme within a plane.
We've got an invading cat.
We do. One moment. It's okay. It's alright. How does he know that he's not supposed to be in here?
Bye.
Yeah, he's smart, but he's not that smart.
Sorry, I had to deal with an invasion of cat.
Yes. So yeah, I think this was like a year of like troping, and then obviously it finished with like a year of sincerity, or a set of sincerity. I don't know, a set that has sincerity to it. Foundation was, I think, a good way to end the year in terms of like bringing everything back to a Magic at its base level before next year we literally shoot for the fucking moon. So I don't know if next year's going to be any less stressful, but I do feel like they tried things this year that I think they got an overwhelmingly strong feedback on that's going to make them go, okay, maybe less of that.
Which takes about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, you know, it might not fix itself by next year, but I think they're also trying to shoot even further next year, which usually either has one or two effects. Either it's really, really bad and people don't like it, or like massively misses the mark, or it's a home run and I think everyone's going to celebrate it. I think they were a little bit half-assed on a couple of the sets this year, and I think it actually shows as the year went on. I think something about the set's like artistic direction, their cohesion as a whole, I think got better and better as the year went on. Weirdly enough, and I think we'll investigate that as we go. But
I think just to revisit a thought, just to kind of maybe give a bit of context where I started. I do remember this time last year. I can't remember if it was in our 23-year review or whether it was in an episode just after that. I think we were debating about Thunder Junction, and it was upcoming. And I remember saying something along the lines of, maybe it is time for Magic to be able to have the space to go, all right, it doesn't necessarily always need to be these are wizards, but what kind of wizards are they? It's about these are cowboys that are also wizards because we're a wizarding game, but we do want to have, like, do you know what I mean? Like, that
doesn't Wizard Cowboy sound so much cooler than how Outlaws of Thunder Junction turned out to be?
Yeah.
A
exactly.
Wizard Cowboy
but, like,
sounds awesome.
They need to have the space to be able to explore those things because there is a finite game. Like, they only have so many ideas, and if they want to try them, then they've got to be allowed to try them. I think the reason I'm stressed out by it is because they really went down the line of, like, we can pass this off as Magic the Gathering because it's just about Magic. Yeah,
it's almost like they took the Magic IP. I guess it's the opposite to like Universes Beyond, of where they take the Magic IP as a system and they put it into a new environment. It's like they've got the Magic environment and then they've pushed this trope through it, which is why I don't think. And I'll go. There was a really succinct Reddit comment that kind of spoke about both Murders of Karlov Manor and Outlaws of Thunder Junction, how it almost like exactly explained why I had a bit of reservation about it. And we'll get to it when
let's
we get there.
So we're going to do the timeline. We're going to try and hit the main sets as like a sort of recap. Mainline sets, I think what we're going to do, Modern Horizons 3, we're going to look
we might as well talk. I think we should talk about that.
And then we'll talk about Jumpstart / Foundations. Obviously, we'll talk about a lot of the other products, but maybe not go quite as in depth about them.
Shocking, we're not going to go into too much depth about Secret Lairs this year.
Remember when we used to do episodes about Secret Lair releases?
Well, that's because it wasn't like half of the years, like half of the updates here are just Secret Lairs, which is fine.
I want it on record, I was always against those.
Yeah, there should be 3. In my mind, there should be 3. There should be a summer super drop, there should be a winter super drop, and then you can do the... what was it? The we pretending we're friends of a company or of a cause, you know.
The cynical cash grab.
Yeah, we're doing the best we can to make it seem like we're not arseholes.
The tax write-off.
Yeah, exactly. Like the fairest drop of them all is literally you're only allowed one, so we're making it cheaper. I'm like, so you're admitting your cunty principles beforehand. Yeah, I know. Well, we're getting in there early today. We get one an episode. It's usually you, and I'm doing it this time. You're admitting to your duplicitous marketing and selling technique by going, but this one, everyone can only have one, and we're going to make it cheaper. How does that help anything?
I think doing a release like doing wrestling pay-per-views is probably actually quite a good system.
It was, but then you're shoving it right at the end of the year, almost like it's that tiny little plaster that's trying to stop a massive leak in your swimming pool. You're going to wake up in the morning to an empty pool, okay? That's plaster ain't going to do shit.
Where's the water going?
Exactly.
Is it an above-ground pool?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's I'm imagining like a garden pool.
Like a big tank.
Yeah. So you slap the thing on the side.
You don't need to plug a leak in an underground.
It's like That's a Lot of Damage guy, where he slaps the tape on things to see how good the tape is. That's what I'm imagining in my head. The tape ain't gonna be good enough. Okay.
Okay. Right. Can we get on with it, please?
So January 12th, Ravnica Remastered. Can you believe that was over a year? That was a year ago.
And the price of some of those cards is still fucking terrible.
Yeah, considering obviously you got me a pack for my birthday, for a Japanese pack.
A Japanese collector booster.
Yeah, of Ravnica Remastered. So for me, it feels like it was a lot sooner, or a lot more recent.
No.
But for it to be, obviously I guess they start the year off with a remastered set, because obviously they're doing Innistrad Remastered next year. And the equity on this is going to be, I think, quite poor as we go further years down the line. There's only so many sets of where you have enough to build up on. I mean, there hasn't been a Dominaria remaster.
Well,
there was Time Spiral remastered.
What they're going to run out of are sets that had more than one block.
Yeah, because they don't do blocks anymore.
Yeah, or more than one set.
Yeah, and even within that, the blocks obviously have 3 sets worth. Like Ravnica had 9 or so sets before. Ravnica's been quite lucky.
They're going to do Theros. Mm-hmm. They might do an Ixalan in 5 or 6 years' time.
Yeah, I think we'd need to go back to Ixalan again.
Sets.
It is 4, yeah.
Oh, no, 3. It'd be 3. Because you had Rivals, you had Ixalan, you had Rivals of Ixalan.
Yeah, then you only had the one set Caverns, Lost Caverns of Ixalan.
Lost World, whatever the fuck.
Yeah. Again, it's like, how much does your card pull? And I think Innistrad, Ravnica, Dominaria...
Tarkir Remastered. They've missed a trick. Why did they not do Tarkir Remastered?
Because they're doing a Tarkir set next year, and the remastered set would only be from those 3.
Oh, I see.
Those 3 sets. I feel like you need to have more than one block's worth to be able to do it, because you can go cards from 10 years ago, from 6 years ago, and from 3 years ago. If it's just cards that have all been out in the last 2 years, I don't think people are going to want to really buy it. Ravnica, I think that the Ravnica remaster set was really, really cool. They did what? They did the old art treatments, they did anime art treatments, they did they did a few of the
they misprinted Tomic with the wrong guild symbol.
Yeah, they did.
Fucking what's that about? That really set a tone for the year. If we're going to talk about this in a Flavour perspective, that really set a tone for the year when they misprinted Tomic with the Azorius symbol, and everyone just went, "You fucking morons!
Yeah.
This is your game."
They didn't even argue the toss of being like, yeah, because I guess they looked at him and went, oh, well, he's a flyer.
He's a lawyer.
In white.
He's a lawyer. Yeah.
It's like so even you agree that the way you look at guilds is reductive. It's a white flyer, Azorius.
Yeah, it's got to be Azorius.
Yeah, it's like, no! Do tiny bits of lore.
The entire point of his character is that he is a non-Azorius lore mage.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, yeah, so you also had the Ravnica City frame. So it was the first time that we got to see... Well, not the first time.
It was the first time we got to see it in set.
Yeah, exactly. Without it just being this random placement thing. I think it went really well. People love the set, It's a bunch of cool cards. You get some old school borders. You get
every Ravnica set, even Dragon's Maze, were they're good sets.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I guess we can then move very swiftly on, because we can skip past the Raining Cats and Dog Secret Lair, which I still can't believe only came out this year.
I can't believe they keep doing Cats and Dog Secret Lairs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not
Leave it
getting
alone.
a copy, but they can't help it. Cats and dogs sell, and they just want things to sell, People don't like edgy horrors and slugs. They want cats and dogs. But then we had Murders of Karlov Manor as the first, actual proper new set of the year. Another set on Ravnica. Ish.
No, I mean, yeah, it was. I still, do you know what? We're going to talk a lot of shit about some of these sets because it's been that kind of a year. I still maintain, I think Ravnica was a good setting to do this thing on, and was a good decision in terms of having it be a world that we knew. If they did it on Capenna, which was the other one, people thought, why don't you just do it on Capenna? There's too much on Capenna that I think they could just go, well, the mystery would be solved easily because angels are there. So they would be able to just go,
the detectives would be angels, yeah.
Angel power, done.
But there was literally angel power in Ravnica.
Different kinds of angels. The Ravnican angels are idiots because they're jocks. They're jocks.
Sure.
They're the Wojek. They are like detectives and stuff, but they're idiots.
Yeah,
Who are
they're
just
like
kill them all, and you're like,
from,
no.
fire and
Don't kill them all,
anger
like-
and stuff, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
still-
rightful flame of justice.
I still maintain it was the right decision in terms of what planes have you got to offer. And as much as the hats were dorky, I actually didn't mind a lot of the detective mise-en-scène.
Yeah, I guess for me, the big thing is, are you looking at the set as another opportunity to explore Ravnica, which at this point we've kind of already explored a bunch of it if you're not going to do something outside of 10th District anyway. I guess the idea was it was specifically a set about a specific story. Where that story is going to be set on is important. Being Ravnica, as you say, you've got all of this intrigue. You have the 10 different factions that all can then be levied against each other, which actually is nice and easy. You've got a bunch of different characters. We already know their allegiances, you know their loyalties, you know how if they're going to be duplicitous or whatever. So all of those things I think works well into a mystery set. And also you kill off characters that people actually give a shit about, which then makes it more compelling. You know, if you did this a new competitor and killed off, Falco, people would be like, great, the bird guy. Who cares? Whereas if you kill off Zagana, it's a bit more like, oh no, not my Bay that I've been playing as my commander deck for the last 10 years.
Loads of them died. Fucking Taser died, Zagana died. Like lots of characters were like being offed.
Yeah, so
fucking
I guess
Trostani gets outed as being like a fucking murderer.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, I don't think that she's wrong. You know, like she or they specifically were tied so closely to the World Soul, and then to feel all of this shit happen to your plane, and then have no one there to defend it. It's like, well, yeah, of course the World Soul will defend itself, and it's going to use this big Dryad, guild leader to be able to help do so. And I think, had there been a bit more of a perspective from Trostani, I think the story might have carried a touch better. Had they not done the thing of where they spoiled the fucking twist like an hour before the story came out to it, that kind of thing. Like, it's a little bit of the handling. I think it didn't not work. I think that the finessing of it might have been a little bit better. And then
got given some really good new characters.
I agree. And I think objectively as a set, I think it's quite cool. I do think that it became a bit too parasitic. I think if we look at the mechanics that were introduced, Disguise, Cloak, Suspect, Collect Evidence, and obviously Investigate made a comeback. Like, two of those we already agree we didn't necessarily like. Since then, the Disguise and Cloak mechanic have already become obsolete with Manifest Dreads, which twice in the same year to do the same mechanic differently of a mechanic that already existed and then got tweaked on. And
also in a way that wasn't necessarily flavorful in the first place.
No, and again,
we gave alternatives that they could have just used.
Yeah, it's like you go top down. You go, hey, we want to make an ability that is you hiding something. It's like fantastic, cool. And then you go, well, let's just refit Morph. It's like, well, can you just do it slightly differently? Could there have been another way to do it? Compare that to Suspect, which I think was a very cool ability. It gets super narrow. You can only use it in certain aspects. I don't think Suspect would work on most planes. Same with Collect Evidence. It's just Delve renamed slightly differently. I think that's what makes it feel too surface level, because I try and think about cards from the set, and I can't think of many that stand out to me as being something, apart from obviously the popular ones that sold really well, like Vein Ripper or something like that. I don't feel like the mechanics themselves were super compelling, even though the set as a whole, I look back through it now, I'm like, there's loads of really cool, micro interactions and micro mechanics that I think work really well. And I like now nearly a year on, looking back at it and then being able to investigate an investigative set and having something be more story-based narrowly than being like, hey, we need to introduce this whole new plane and give you all of the different factions and everything.
That's why I think it works.
Yeah. The only thing I would say for it is that it's more forgivable at a distance, even though I feel like the theme and the delivery of the set probably could have been better. They
really didn't need to do all the detective hats.
No.
They could have had literally one character in a detective hat and people would have been like, sick, good reference. And everything else could have just been fine.
And it's one thing to make a joke and a trope of like, here's an Archon with a detective hat. It's like, but if you do it actually kind of carte blanche and honestly, people are going to call you out on it and it's going to look a little bit funky.
Yeah.
Next! I guess we should also quickly talk about Ravnica Clue Edition.
Well, yeah, we didn't really talk about it much at the time.
No.
I think it's fine.
Kitchen. It's a card. It's a clue land.
Yeah, I mean, I get, but this is the other side of us, like the coin of looking at, oh, okay, so these are tropey things that Magic's trying to do. When they are like, no, it's Cluedo, but we're just having some fun.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, oh, okay.
It's Cluedo with Magic, and it's Magic put with Cluedo.
Yeah.
And again, it's your own IP, you can kind of get away with integrating it as hard as they want.
I think that's totally fine. And I think they didn't make anything super nuts powerful.
No.
But I just think that was actually a really good example, if I want to move forward, of how you can do things which people can kind of go, oh, that's cute. You can pick it up or you can put it down.
See, when I look at something like Duskmorn, of how contained an environment it is, had they not also done that in the same year, I would have really enjoyed seeing, instead of the story of Murders of Karloff Manor happening on Ravnica, happening somewhere like Duskmorn, in a house that transforms itself, and then you have more of that Cluedo feeling, and you've got all of the characters from your sets that can be there. I mean, I think that maybe the story of Murders of Karloff Manor could have worked slightly better in an environment like Duskmorn, because you've got this kind of non-Ravnica backdrop to it, to kind of pull away from it a little bit.
My problem with that is, and again, I think the reason it was a smart decision is because for a detective story to work, or any kind of like mystery to work, you need to understand what the rules are, so that when they reveal things, they go, that makes sense.
Yeah, you can't just explain it as you go and expect people to accept it.
If they did it on a plane where, I don't fucking know. Let's say they did it on Duskmorn, so that we do know what the rules are. But obviously we're discovering what the plane is as we're going. And they went, the killer is this. And everyone, of course, because on this plane, people age backwards, or whatever fucking rule they want to have. It's like, well, that wasn't something we were privy to previously.
Yeah.
So there isn't a mystery.
There isn't, you can't red herring when you don't know what any of the herrings kind of should be.
So I think doing it on Ravnica, everyone knows who the guilds are, everyone knows what the rules are, everyone understands that the idea of a guild leader going around killing other guild leaders is like a big fucking deal.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Okie dokie. So, I don't care about magic cons. I mean, although it's nice to have them back and everything. Alchemy, we don't care about that either. Okay, I guess a big thing, our yearly Universes Beyond, this year was Fallout.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously we did a big episode on this. I recently listened back to it. I think it's quite a nice episode to talk about, I guess. I think it worked. One of the main things from it was the Pip-Boy art treatment that they then repurposed kind of into the specifically paranormal. The paranormal art treatment from Duskmorn. That was quite cool. I think it wasn't very egregious. I think it fit quite well. People like playing the Mothman deck. I feel like it stands out slightly less than the Warhammer and the Doctor Who sets do. I don't know
that's
why.
Interesting, isn't it? Well, I think also it's an interesting comparison to Duskmorn. Is when we get to Duskmorn, we will undoubtedly talk about how some of the things were jarring. We weren't quite sure about the modern setting, and yet Fallout is also just an alternate history for Earth. And you're right, it didn't stick out as much. And even as someone who doesn't really play Fallout, I play other Bethesda games. Skyrim, looking at you, so I understand Fallout. I don't play it, but I think it just edges that little bit of fantasy. It is like, that's a TV, but it's a TV that's in a stylized way. Because it's from the 50s and not from the 80s.
Retro. It's the retro. It feels older than it is.
Retro
even though it's
tech
futuristic.
feels like fantasy tech.
Exactly.
So there is that element to it.
Yeah. I really enjoyed. I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Because I think Skyrim. I don't know if we said this when we did the Fallout episode, but Skyrim's a kind of setting that fits better for Magic, but Fallout's a more more engrossing world for you to take the tropes from. You know, I don't care about a Mirelurk crab.
Well, no, because Skyrim. Obviously, it has its own mythology and its own lore as the Elder Scrolls, right? But all of that is based off of high fantasy.
Yeah, it would just be dragons and barbarians.
Page for page.
Yeah. It
So
would feel a little bit
right
Nordic because of the way that they do the
for Skyrim specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because obviously the way they do the settlements and stuff. Like, it'd be interesting to see down the line if they do want to do an Elder Scrolls. I mean, if the new Elder Scrolls that comes out at some point is maybe eventually going to come out, the Elder
Scrolls 6.
Yeah, the Elven Kingdom one. If that does really well, there's a good chance that Magic will come knocking and be like, "Hey, do you want to do some?" Is that
where they're setting Elder Scrolls 6?
I believe so. It's the
not
Elven
Morrowind,
Kingdom.
but it's
another area of the kingdom. Yeah, that might be something they turn around and go like, "Hey, do you want to do a cross IP? Because it's about time." The Fallout worked, and I think it probably made money for Bethesda. And let's see. Right, okay, moving through the year. So that's March. We are then. I don't care about bannings. Don't care about Super Drop Secret Les. Release of Outlaws of Thunder Junction, April 19th.
The day Magic died.
Well.
Sorry, I don't mean to be that morbid about it.
So also, notably, this also included the big score, which is a bonus sheet similar to what...
God, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just all over the place.
But they tried Aftermath, right, and then they were like, this didn't work. People hated it. One of the worst products I think they released in terms of profitability. So they went, hey, let's castrate the mythics from this set and actually add in a whole bonus sheet of really overly powerful, really interesting cards and completely whitewash them because you're shoving it in the back of a set that already had enough things to complain about. You can't disentangle them.
Do you know what the irony is, though? Now having distance, trying to have the perspective of, okay, let's look at this year back rather than trying to recapture the anger I felt at the time.
Yeah.
Aftermath didn't work because it was a fucking piss piddle of an epilogue for a story that we already had, and it was a piss piddle of a fucking epilogue of a card set. Like, it was just like, why have you done this? It is a senseless cash grab for you to try something new.
An epilogue is always on the end of a set for a reason, and that's because it adds a little bit, but you either add it as part of the set deliberately from the beginning, so it feels like the culmination, or you do a whole nother thing and you make it into its own thing.
That felt like they had a bunch of cards they couldn't fit into the set, and they were like, well, let's fucking chuck it on the end.
Yeah.
The big score, ironically, I think, would have been a much better product sell, because they would have been like, okay, this has been Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Yeah. Here's like this special set of like, what did they find in the vault?
You've got to the end of the story, they get to the vault, you don't know what's in the vault, and then you release a little bit of a set afterwards going, they cracked into the vault, let's look at the treasure inside. I don't know how they'd have sold it in a way that didn't financially... Because that was the big issue for them, right? Is there wasn't a way for them to market Aftermath in a way that made people want to spend money on it, because the pack sizes were really, really small. You couldn't draft it, and like, I don't know how many things you have to change to make it to make it appealing.
Yeah.
That having like a vault pack of where you're going in and you're going, oh, I wonder what I found in there. That's really cool. It doesn't work when there's only 30 cards. You know, it would have worked better as like another 100 card set or something. But to also learn all of these things about the Fomori, but then there was no story aspect to it. At least Aftermath got a couple of stories. It got the Ajani story, and it got the
I suppose
Nahiri story.
none of the things in the vault, it was really just an excuse to be... okay, so it was an excuse just to do, like, here's some weird magic shit. But then also, is that such a bad thing? Because we like having weird magic shit.
Yeah, but not when it's also integrated into the same set, because it felt even more disjointed from the rest of Outlaws of Thunder Junction.
Yeah.
So it's all stuff that has this old arcane lore that's actually not related at all to anything from the set, because all of that's happened in the last 100 years or so. Well, no, sorry, last like six years. But the vault's been there for hundreds, or God knows who knows. So we're opening up this old sarcophagus full of interesting, cool stuff, and tacking it onto a set with, hey, here's a centaur that's got spurs on its hooves.
Oh, yeah.
Great. So he's spurring him, because normally the rider has it to spur the horse on. If you're the centaur, you are the horse. What are the spurs for?
It's kind of like when you do like a calorie tracker to motivate yourself.
Yeah, like... But like, it's one of those things. It felt like it had way more integrity than the rest of Outlaws of Thunder Junction did, in terms of like, it had narrative scope, it had mechanical scope, and yet it just all got blended into the same mixer and just went, hey, do you enjoy a Long Island iced tea? Cool, it's also got coffee in it. Great, fantastic.
Affogato.
Yeah, that's like, so my one line of this is, cards are cool in retrospect, but the plane really came and went like all the prospecting settlements it represented. Isn't that cool? Because obviously the idea...
Sorry, I won't launch into my next point. Wow, Nathan, that's so insightful.
Thank you. Wasn't that clever? The analogy. Good. Right.
I'm looking through the card gallery of this, and obviously this is an Omen Path set, so you do have some like weird things.
It's the finale of the Omen Path set.
So it's got like Claim Jumper. That's this rabbit mercenary, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously that stands out. But again, we said it at the time, and my thoughts and feelings haven't changed on this one. The things where it's like, this is what is unique to the plane. These are the ideas that you don't find anywhere else. Are fucking cool.
Bristly Bill,
the cactus folk.
Yeah.
The fact that dragons on the plane are scorpion demons.
Well, I think that's because they came from another.
But
plane.
Okay, fine. But visually,
they
fit there because there's like, because you have scorpions.
Well, you're not
going
to actually go to that plane, so the nearest Omen Path to that plane then allows you to be on Thunder Junction.
And I think we said this at the time. I seem to remember saying it. The actual things that you think, right? We have Western, we have cowboy, we have the sort of the deserts in the US, in North America. Here's how we like. What are the tropes there? And they have enough that you can have like a visual identity. But the thing that makes Westerns so appealing as a genre, because really, we're talking about like a fucking 30-year period of like the Old West before or just after the Gold Rush, however you want to kind of like, whatever. There's just not enough there in terms of like other stuff.
It's not a strong enough backdrop to
do
carry magic.
And I think that's maybe why they tried to fill it in with all these characters from other planes, because like, well, they will fill in the gaps and they'll make it interesting or whatever. But they still then went, yeah, but they're all wearing cowboy gear.
It made those characters to me less interesting to fit the trope, and it didn't improve the trope to have those characters there. You know, it's like you see Marchesa and you're like, but why? You see Rakdos and you're like, but why? There's no like, oh, that makes sense to me. Kervek actually made sense. In fact, I feel like they probably went too wide with their scope of what they tried to include, because there wasn't enough of a backdrop. They
did a lot of characters.
Yeah, and you could have just made it all about the discovery of Thunder and how it all worked, and instead of it just feeling like, hey, we've shown up to the party a little. It's like showing up to it's like buying a game where there's already been a year's worth of DLC, and the DLC has kind of ruined the aesthetic of what the original game was.
Yeah.
And everyone's used to it because they've already been playing that game for a year, and then they get the DLC and
Well,
they
it's
faff about.
the Blood and Wine DLC for Witcher 3, where everything's
if
like
you
fairy
arrive
tale.
and all the DLC's already unlocked, you don't understand what the base of the set's supposed to be in the first place. And again, like mechanics-wise, I think it was cool, it was fine, but it didn't do anything groundbreaking. Saddle's fine. I think the outlaw batching is probably the best thing that came from the set in terms of because Spree's fine, it's just kicker. Plot's fine, it's just Fotel. Saddle's fine, it's just crew. But I think outlaw batching was kind of cool.
God, Saddle, what a miss.
Yeah. And I think let's also quickly touch on it then. I mean, are we going to do the story? Are we going to do the story in a larger stroke, or can we quickly talk about it now because this is technically the end of the Omen Path
Let's talk about it as we go.
So the Omen Path arc was essentially the 4 sets that Kellen was journeying around. You had him on Eldraine, then he went to Ixalan, then he became a detective in Murders of Karlov Manor, and then he became a little cowboy Billy the Kid character in Outlaws of Thunder Junction.
Yeah, Kellen the Kid.
I do think it's interesting they called it the Omen Path arc, where Omen Paths seem to be even more important during the Dragonstorm arc.
Yeah.
When they could have just called it the Kellen arc, and I think they might have avoided doing that because it sounds shittier.
Who's Kellen?
Yeah, and I get it, but like for me, the Omen Path cycle, it started, or the Omen Path arc started obviously after the invasion, but it hasn't culminated and completed. Like it hasn't felt like this is now over now. I don't see the transition in terms of story beats. Like, if the book ended at Outlaw of Thunder Junction and then a new book starts, I don't see how those two things are necessarily related. I still feel like the Dragonstorm elements of the last 2 sets are way more diminished than the Omen Path aspects of the
Oh, no, 100%. We're in the middle of, the dragon arc.
Because we spoke about it.
We've seen 2 dragons.
Yeah, we spoke about it. We were like, oh, okay, so I guess the Omen Path arc's going to be completed and there's going to be, like, a culmination. And the culmination came to, hey, we've got Loot and he can see the rest of the universe. Oh, we didn't even talk about how Loot's now in the game from a big score or whatever.
Well, we can talk about that in my biggest disappointments of the year.
Fair enough. Cool. But it's interesting to think that, like, that's where the story was supposed to end, the arc, and then start a new one, but it didn't really feel like it. It feels like the whole year is still just a continuation of the Omen Path issues that are occurring. You know, things like Duskmourn is arguably more interesting from an Omen Path perspective than it is from a Dragonstorm perspective.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe they've fumbled the arcs a little bit, because it's supposed to be 3 yearly arcs. They really just hate doing long-term story, which is really annoying because.
But I think that's because people are impatient, and I think unless you're doing it for a decade, people assume you've not done it at all. So, like, if we look at the Bolas arc, where it was all the way through to War of the Spark, that was like a decade's worth of storytelling, or at least it felt like it, I suppose. I mean, what would you consider like the first Bolas stories? Alara. So there you go. So it was like we're talking like a decade-long thing.
Yeah.
And then when we had All Will Be One and the new Phyrexian arc, people were like, oh, well, that wasn't a lot of setup. And you're like,
there was
like
a shitload of
setup.
setup.
That was like a 3-year arc. What are you talking about? Like, that was 3 years of our lives from like Kaldheim through.
And it's got even more. I guess the thing is there is less setup for these things because they're new things. Like the Omen Path's new. The setup to that is the Phyrexians broke the multiverse. Which you could say all of the build up to the Phyrexians was all build up to the Omen Paths, you know?
Well, a little bit, yes.
So I guess there is an argument for that of where I guess it will always feel like it's still going on, and the arc might not feel like an arc because it's a new thing anyway.
What they should have done is they should have pulled back even further and been like, the Omen Path arc starts with the Phyrexian saga, goes into the Kellen saga, goes into the Dragon saga.
It should have been an overarching arc for individual sagas, I agree. And that's the thing I think that's annoying me, is that it doesn't feel like the Omen Path arc is over.
Omen Path saga going into the arcs, so however you want to do it.
I'm kind of getting that same feeling from the Dragonstorm one, of where the main story for the Dragonstorm arc is going to be the last story where it culminates and closes.
Yeah. At the moment, we've had a haunted house, and now we're going to have a dune buggy race.
So it's not an arc at all. It's actually just a really slow simmer, and then boom, flambe.
Are we going to have like a dragon winning the race?
I mean, we haven't seen any dragons in there, right? Yeah, but I mean, how are they going to...
Sandbagging. We didn't get the Phyrexians in the key art until like last minute for Kaldheim.
I guess, because I feel like also Ether Drift is more of a representation of what the Omen Paths mean in terms of all of these different teams are coming from all these different planes specifically because of the Omen Paths. You're driving through multiple different planes because of the Omen Paths. The fuck does this have to do with dragons? So my gripe for this is that I really like the storyline of it. I really like how we're getting the Fomori more invested.
That was big.
All of this is really cool. Again, everything about the big score and what it represents in terms of this big old school archaic vault That's really, really cool. The idea that they found this on this backwater fucking plane that's only just been recently explored was fantastic. Ignoring all of the mechanics and the actual, set of cards.
The idea
it was a really
good.
cool story.
And do you know, again, I don't think the concept of having let's have magic wizard cowboys is fundamentally a bad one. I think it looked boring as a set. They didn't really hammer in on the interesting points, or maybe they misjudged. The Atin were cool, the Cactus Folk were cool, the Scorpion Dragons were cool, and what did they focus on? Yeah, another fucking set of Rakdos, Geezer and Geralf, and fucking all those guys.
Committing crimes.
Oh yeah, whatever. Fucking who cares?
Oh, everything's a crime now. Isn't that fun?
I think that's just it. I think they misjudged what people cared about, and they just made another hat set.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, we've talked about how many hats are in the set. Cool. So some slight deviation from talking about product. April 26th. It says April 26th or 28th. I'm assuming that the 26th is when this happens. Cynthia Williams officially steps down as president and CEO of Wizards of the Coast. We are under new management, which is concerning. I don't feel like how Hasbro needs the business to operate, like WotC as a business to operate. I don't feel like it's ever a good thing when we have a shift of management, because it's very rare that someone taking over is for the betterment of the players.
Well, Wizards of the Coast, not Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast are the only profitable part of Hasbro, and that's kind of well documented. And it is majoritively through Magic the Gathering. D&D makes a lot of money through the players' handbooks.
But the thing for them is they struggle to market on the everyday, right? This is why Magic is so profitable, is because it's constant new product coming out that people need to keep up with.
They have opposite problems, because everyone, even people who've never heard of any fantasy thing whatsoever, know what Dungeons and Dragons is as like a broad idea, and they understand. Oh, it's like you pretend to be an elf or a goblin or some shit. You say to them, Magic the Gathering, and they're like, oh, is that like Pokemon cards?
Yeah, yeah. Like, I was like, when people ask me, it's like, oh, it's kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh, but slower. People are like, oh, okay.
I say it's like Pokemon cards, but it's Dungeons and Dragons. And they go, oh, all right then. So, but as you're right, you can't market that every day, because not everyone has 5 hours once a month to sit down with their friends and do the first time thing of a campaign and then play it again. Whereas Magic players want to play Magic every day. Yeah. So opposite problems, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess it's just interesting to think that how the next few years are going to go. You know, little things like we've noticed that play boxes now down to 30 packs instead of 32 packs. It's all of this, everything's squeezing. That's nothing new. Inflation, blah blah blah. Everything's going to be worse. Money is less valuable than it used to be. But having said that, the way they now release products does tend to make individual cards, as a singles buyer, individual cards do tend to be a lot cheaper now, which is lovely. We haven't spoken about it yet, but there are a million different types of card being printed within sets, let alone just across the year. Different treatments, different art styles, which is very cool. I'm more interested to see how a retrospective of next year is going to be. I think next year is kind of the make or break in seeing how how the business side of this game kind of is going to be affected and changed. I feel like they're shooting for the moon from a story perspective and from a mechanical perspective, I assume. Let's see kind of like what happens in terms of, can I actually afford to play this game anymore? Will I eventually go, right, I've got all the cards I need. This is now the game I'm playing.
Interesting. I saw I didn't post this on socials because I sense checked it was someone who knew nothing about it in context, and they said it was a bit mean. There was a picture on LinkedIn, I found it, of all fucking places, where it was Hasbro, because I follow them on LinkedIn, as I do Wizards of the Coast. And they both posted up a picture of Chris Cox, who is the CEO of Hasbro, with a bunch of other high execs promoting Magic by having it was like a sort of candid, quote-unquote, shot of them all playing Magic on like a hotel sort of kitchen tabletop or whatever, and it looks like someone had a bunch of product, they opened it up, they threw the cards down and were like, if you just kind of arrange them like this, it looks like you're playing Magic. And I like, because they had like, Chris Cox had like 30 lands of all different types, just kind of roughly in the area that you'd have lands. Everything was kind of like just half,
so disingenuous.
All of like the placements of all the cards were like sort of just slapped down, like,
Higgledy-piggledy,
do you know what I mean? It just didn't look
a facsimile of someone who thinks they know what it's like, and you're the CEO. You don't know what your game looks like.
Well, I think this is in. I think that's they all did, but they all clearly weren't playing a game of Magic, and I really wanted to post it and be like, tell me you don't play Magic without telling me you don't play Magic. But it was just that's weird. Don't bother. Like, why would you even bother? Because the people who play the game are going to be like, You're not playing.
Well,
Magic,
because the things they want people to believe are not the things that are true.
Yeah.
That's the long and short of it. Business will be the shortest answer for it. Anyway, moving back into actual things. Modern Horizons 3, June 14th.
Oh my god, Modern Horizons 3.
Yeah.
Eldrazi time, bitches.
When you're like, the first one came as such a wrecking ball. The fact that we've done 2 more sets since then, and they've all been equally devastating to the format of Modern, and then also peripherally to the format of Commander, is kind of baffling, because apparently
Do you think this one's been that bad?
So there's been a massive surge of players towards Standard recently, which obviously they've wanted because Standard's been kind of like not dying
dead.
out,
Well,
but it's been slowing down in terms
pretty
of
dead.
It's been slowing down in terms of like upkeep and people wanting to play it. And what people are doing now is they're tending to move over to Standard because Pioneer's a little bit of a mess and it's unsanctioned. Like you don't get proper tournament play for it. And Modern, because it's become this 2-year quote unquote rotational format, whereas you've now got Standard, which is an absolute 3-year rotating format.
And it's honest about it.
People are actually going back towards Standard because, again, they banned the One Ring today. They've unbanned a few things like Mox Opal, Faithless Looting, Splinter Twin. They're trying to entice people back in. And I feel like they really notice the numbers diminish and go, right, okay, is there a way to fix this? Making sets like this, Modern Horizons 3, is never going to necessarily fix the problem of now that once the Band-Aid's off, it's off, Like, you did it already with the first set, and each iteration, it does tend to break the format again. I feel like you can't help that if you're admitting that the format is somewhere between Legacy, Speed, and Standard power. And even then, I think there are some Modern decks that could probably stand up to some Legacy decks, depending on, what kind of interaction it's playing, because obviously each metagame obviously respects each other differently. For me, it's a bunch of really cool cards that are going to be... It's another sink of money for me. MDFC's coming out. Cool. All of them are really, really playable. You've got all these really cool mythics and everything that you can play with. I think all the power level being higher in general, I think has a more egregious effect than just breaking Modern. I think it just creates a higher parity of power across the board. The amount of times I look at a card, I'm like, what the fuck? When did they print? Oh, right, yeah, Modern Horizons. And it's always nutter but as powerful. And it's an effect like Volatile Stormdrake, where I'm like, you just reprinted Gilded Drake. You just reprinted a bunch of cards that are on the reserved list, but you made it in a way that, people can... You got around it, And that's fine, that's cool. You used energy for most of it, which is a little bit, insidious, because, hey, guess what the most popular deck in Modern is at the moment? An energy deck, because all you've done is provide a shitload of support for it.
I remember when Kaladesh Standard first came out, and, those Teamer energy decks were nuts.
One of the first swing of what people would call shocking bans, attune the ether, a single green to search your library for a land, put it into your hand, and you get 2 energy. Now that sounds like a pretty averagely shit card. Bad. It's what happens when you make things like Lucky Clover. You make a card that is so specifically powerful with this one mechanic, and because you haven't done enough testing, or you didn't do enough play testing, or you want to push, the fire design of, hey, let's make everything really powerful, and then we can curb it afterwards. That's absolutely fine, but you're gonna run into the same problems consistently over and over, of where you just want to go, hey, let's make the mechanic kind of strongish, and you don't realize that this interaction and this interaction actually busts it in half, and then you need to do a load of random common, blanket ban a bunch of commons and stuff, which then Shanghai's the whole mechanic and then makes it unplayable. I think they ended up banning enough cards in energy that just no one was able to play it anymore. And it's like, cool, the idea was to make a mechanic that was fun. You did that, you made it too powerful, and then you had to ban things to make it unplayable. And that kind of pendulum swinging is what turned people away from Standard for a fair while, because why should I invest in cards that aren't going to rotate in 2 years or 3 years? They're actually going to only be legal for 6 months before you have to emergency ban them. And I feel like the problem is that you have a lot of people doing things like Modern Horizons design, of where they need to push the envelope to fit in this middle ground of power, and then they can't help but push the envelope for Standard sets as well. I don't think it's true across the board, but I do think it's a good thing they don't make Legacy Horizons.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, looking at it as a set through the card gallery, do I like these kinds of sets more than the storyline sets now? That would be the biggest slap in the face to Magic Story if I did say that. What I will say is with the freedom that you have in these ancillary sets, even when they do theme them around Eldrazi and Energy, which are the 2 big pillars for this one, right? Just looking at alphabetical order, Dreadmobile, Dream Dream Drink a Vampire and Dream Tide Whale, if you just pick out those 3 cards, what's it? Dreadmobile. You sacrifice creatures to harvest their bones and make a car out of it. Like, Dream Drink a Vampire. It's a vampire who drinks your dreams. And, like, you know, the artwork is this kind of nightmarish vampire who's literally, like, fucking dream eating, like Gengar from Pokemon. And then then Dreamtide Whale is a whale that, when it comes out the water when it's jumping, turns into a cloud. You look at them and you think, these are real fucking...
cool concepts.
These are Magic cards.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? This is what people came to Magic the Gathering for. Unfortunately, Wizards, sorry, bros, people don't really come because they're like, oh, I know cowboys. Cowboys are fun. They go, what is this bizarre nonsense and how do I become a part of it?
Is this would you say this was a precursor to Foundations in terms of, like, this is the Magic set? Like, you do a little bit of the Origins thing of where you do a 5 cycle of Planeswalkers and you see their origins, which is very cool. You get to see a new take on the Eldrazi Titans and of reprinting them again. You get, you know, an Eldrazi Dragon, for God's sake. Like, you get all of these really cool... And again, I egged on them. I negged on it a little bit, saying, like, oh, you can't just reprint... what is it called? Reserve list cards with energy mechanics and then make a new... But at the same time, you're still paying homage to all these really cool, powerful effects you have within the game.
I think it's needed, and I think people bagged on core sets for a similar reason. I know core sets were predominantly reprints, but people bag on those kind of, like, no direction sets. You think, well, actually, if you don't do that, it's like people are slightly bagging... I mean, we've done it here. We're slightly bagging on Foundations being around for 5 years now. But it's like, well, if you don't have your fucking Magic veggies, and all you have is
you don't get the meat.
Cowboy dessert, then it's just going to be fucking awful after a while.
And it's true, I'm looking through the set now, I'm like, God, there are so many just cool cards. There's just so many cool effects that make decks more interesting. And again, like, from a story point of view, there was a bunch of extra story, you know? We got a bunch of extra little glimpses across the multiverse at things that I think actually fully justifies... And again, is this what a core set should feel like? Should it feel like should we be getting expert level core sets and then beginner level story sets? You know, why should the core sets not only be more vanilla in terms of their flavor, then also vanilla in terms of their mechanic? And I feel like this is the nice middle ground where, okay, yeah, Foundations is still really, really cool, but when we get to it, it's a little bit easier to forget everything that's within it. Whereas Shill Gengar. Excuse me?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to forget that in a while, you know? The fact we got, like, 6, or even, like, I'm looking at Spring Heart Nantuko. Like, I've played 2 games with that card, and every game... It's nuts. Yeah. It just does really cool gameplay things, and it makes the cards memorable, and it makes you go, this is Magic. This is on the mechanical intrigue, and then I also want these really, really pretty artworks, and it can be from any fucking set, you know? Like, Insect Monk. People will be like, why is it an insect? It's like, oh, well, so on Kamigawa, you've actually got these, like, you know... Well, actually, it's not Kamigawa, is it? Nantuko's Dominaria. Yeah. Nantuko's Dominaria. Yeah. I'm bad at remembering things.
I mean,
sometimes.
it's a monk, isn't it?
You know, so it's one of those kind of things. Again, it creates the intrigue, and it has the power and the aplomb to pull it off. It's not a core set where you go, okay, great, a vanilla creature. I guess the flavor was cool, but let's be honest, I'm not putting this any decks. You're not coming in, Scritches. Okay, you've got to stay out.
Moving on.
Anyway, moving on. We are now to the latter half of the year. We had some Hatsune Miku Super Drops. Great, cool. But we did get another Universes Beyond. I kind of forgot about this until I've just read it. Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, you and everyone else. The only reason I know that it's around is because I won a pack from Tim Willoughby at Magic Con Amsterdam, and it had the alt art foil sort of Feast of Famine. Baby! And I also got Reconnaissance.
Super pretty though, right? Sort of Feast and Famine, and it's a crop shit. It's a harvesting device. Feast and Famine.
Yeah.
Now, isn't that infinitely more flavourful than just random Chris Ransword? Which isn't a bad thing.
No.
It's not a bad thing. Hey, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But just
about Chris's name.
Hey, look, Mirrodin, we make swords and we care about colours-ish, even though we don't because it's technically more about artifacts. Whereas you've got Sword of Feast and Famine, it's like a Kopesh kind of like looking.
Yeah. It's a scythe sword.
So I think Assassin's Creed works just as well as Fallout. I just think it was a slightly less interesting IP for people to get behind.
I have such a weird relationship with Assassin's Creed. I sunk so many hours of my teenage life into Assassin's Creed 1 through 3, including things like Brotherhood and Revelations. And then after 3, I didn't play a single one.
Yeah, it just goes off the fucking deep end.
I hear Black Flag is actually one of the best in the series. I'll never know.
I just think it's interesting that you've got things like we've got things like Excalibur in Magic IP.
This is why I'm just like, come on.
But through a different IP. Because obviously they made things like Embercleave, which is the Excalibur of Magic.
This is why I fucking hate it.
And then they went, hey, well, let's actually just do Adam and Eve and Thor.
You've almost nailed the exact reason I think Universes Beyond is ultimately a mistake. Because Magic already pays homage to these things, so you can't fucking... They're double dipping.
Yeah.
They're double dipping, mate.
They are double dipping. Oh no, Hasbro double dipping. What a shock and surprise that is. Okay, cool. Did anything else interesting happen?
Oh, God, John... it's been a whole 45 minutes.
Without crime?
Without crime.
Fantastic.
Well done. I was about to say where you live. I'm not going to dox you.
I think people know it's... You're going to blank that out.
I am going to blank that out.
Why don't you want people to know where I live?
Because it's funnier now.
John Haidt then gets employed on the July 18th as the new COO of Wizards of the Coast and Digital Gaming.
Yes, not CEO.
No.
Chris Cox is the CEO of Hasbro.
Yeah, this is of Wizards specifically.
He's the COO.
Yeah.
Chief Operations Officer.
And then also Harley Barbakovi, or Barbachovi, I'm sorry, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, takes on the role of Chief People Officer, which I think is very necessary in a climate of where we need to really be paying attention to what people are doing and how the work ethic is, you know?
Yeah.
Better police yourself, Hasbro.
Yeah, just have a bit of a culture around you.
About fucking time. August 2nd, release of Bloomborough.
Woo!
So I said this earlier.
Woo!
Hype for the Bloomborough.
Fucking, can you guess which my set is the favourite? I listened to, sorry to cut you off immediately, I listened to the EDH Rec podcast, big up EDH Rec podcast, fucking love that show, and they were talking about their sets for the year. None of them picked Bloomborough.
Really?
What is that about? Not one of the three of them.
What scope were they talking? Were they talking about any set, including like Modern Horizons?
I think they discussed them, but I think they were thinking more mainline sets. I think they went for click. I think it was like Duskmourn was like out of the three of them. I think Duskmourn won twice. I can't remember what the other one was.
Interesting. Did they say for flavour reasons, mechanical reasons?
Modern Horizons 3. No, Foundations. One of them picked Foundations.
Okay.
I think the other two picked Duskmourn.
That's so interesting. Do you reckon that was a because we don't play as much as we could, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely an element of I think, what's it called? Permanence, like memory permanence, of where like you might relate more to the things that are more recent because you have a stronger perspective on it.
Maybe. I don't know, man. I just think people have different perspectives.
Yeah. I mean, I also
people have their own opinions.
Yeah, I mean, people are allowed to think different things, right? So I said this before we were recording, or at least before we started the episode, that in my mind, Bloomborough happened... Obviously, now I'm thinking about it. Obviously, of course, it didn't. But when I was thinking about it, I thought that Bloomborough happened before Outlaws of Thunder Junction. And for me, that's concerning, because it does mean that I really enjoyed this set. I think that Bloomborough was the best aesthetic set of the year. And I think I think it's the favourite plane that we've gone to this year for the feels. But because in the long term, it has a lower power level...
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to lead to being less relevant quicker.
Yeah.
I think as a whole, I think the art style is phenomenal. A lot of my favourite artists and the things I got stuck on today looking through like the card gallery for the entire year, I got stuck on Bloomborough cards a lot because there's just an aesthetic about it. It's very different to anything else we've seen recently, and there was a real quality there. New artists, old artists doing things in new styles. I think in general, I think the art style for Bloomborough is insanely pretty. It's gorgeous. Outside of that, I feel like I'm going to care less about that set in 4 months' time than, say, Outlaws, because Outlaws create such a visceral reaction to me, and within that, I still think some of the cards are really cool. I think the Big Score has some of the more interesting cards, the most enjoyable cards that I've played with this year. Whereas with Bloomborough, it has the horrible, for me personally, it has the horrible moniker of being like, but it's not Lorwyn. It's delightful. I love Sylvanian families. I love Redwall. I love all of that idea, but it's always going to sit on this kind of like, cool, it just sits in the Lorwyn part of my brain, but it's not Lorwyn.
Yeah, but I think they're allowed to exist sort of side by side.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not allowed. It's just that's where it sits in my brain. It kind of sits within that same niche. And I'll talk about it when we get to artists a little bit later, because I feel like there's a lot of I could imagine this artist doing work for this other set.
Yeah, but is it just you like that type of thing? Like, I love The Matrix, for example, the Matrix films. Does that mean that I have to, like, every time I watch another cyberpunk film, usually with Keanu Reeves in it, I have to be like, well, but it's not The Matrix.
No, but would it not? For me, it doesn't sit in isolation as much, because there's this other thing that I can compare it to that's very similar. So the two of them kind of become more of a thing together.
I would really argue that it's actually, like, honestly, I think they did enough for me. This is for me then. Maybe I'm not arguing against you. I completely understand what you're saying. I think for me, that's how I'm going to frame this, that they differentiated it so much with the rules that they gave it and the rules that they didn't give it. So if we talk about, like, how does the world work? And we were speaking earlier on about, like, it was good setting Ravnica with the detective story because we understand how Ravnica works. You couldn't do that with a new plane because they could just pull the rug from under you. With Bloomburrow, especially knowing what we know now, again, you're in review, going into Duskmourn. And Duskmourn was a very complicated, nuanced plane as an idea. How have they executed it? The idea of it was fairly nuanced. Bloomburrow, they went for a super soft magic system.
Really, really simple idea.
Brandon Sanderson thing, yeah. They had 2 rules, really, which was everyone's an animal, including people who travel to the plane, which probably wouldn't have been known. Ironically, the denizens of the plane wouldn't have known that, because for them it's normal. It's only people travelling in that would know that.
They still seem like, even within the story, they still seem to not fully grasp what is happening.
Because
they're still like, oh, you come from far away.
Because the Omen paths really haven't affected them. That's why. Because they don't have a concept of non-animal folk.
Yeah.
Whereas people on other, like, ironically, although they have a multitude of animal folk of different races, people on other planes that maybe share minotaurs or centaurs or humans could go, you're a human, but you're not like we're a human. Whereas they're like,
weirdly enough,
just rabbits.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They do have a teeny hint of it in the story where they say, wait, Ral, you're not, you can't change the tides of the river.
You don't otter things the way that other otters otter things.
Which is interesting, right? But so they give that one rule, and the second rule is calamity beasts. They have magic, but it is known to them that if they use their magic too much, calamity could happen. They could turn into calamity.
That's the kind of thing that would have been interesting to delve into in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, with how the thunder was forming, how it only really started happening when people started going there. That's the kind of thing they should have focused on to make that plane more interesting and have a bit more what's the word? Not longevity. Justification. I can't think of the word, but it makes it feel more real. It makes it feel more lived in. Whereas with Bloomburrow, they have, again, this idea that anyone who goes there becomes an animal. Automatically, that's really interesting, because your brain then goes, well, then how would this work? How would that work? And they don't have to explain all of those things, you know?
Whereas you compare that, say, to Lorwyn, that has an incredibly complicated political system between the different races for magic at the time.
This is excluding the Aurora, which was already causing big
very
issues.
factional. Then you add in the Aurora, and then it's kind of like literal night and day.
Yeah, and it's literally switches how people act and things.
And it's actually, then the nuance gets built in more hardcore. If anything, it's more like Duskmourn. So I completely see what you're saying from a kind of tonal and feel aesthetic, but I think from actually how they executed it, it lives completely in its own world.
The way I look at it is that as a set by itself, it feels more perfect than most sets that have released recently. But for some reason, I feel like until we go back again, I'm going to end up, or its mechanics get used somewhere else. I feel like it sits in that nice little bubble, but that bubble then can bounce and float off a little bit more easily. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's just the pleasant aesthetics. Maybe it's the fact that maybe because I didn't have such a difficulty kind of acclimatizing to it and enjoying it compared to all of the 3 other main sets of this year. I'm not including Foundations, I'm not including Modern Horizons. Duskmourn, Outlaws, and Murders all gave me pause to make me try and interrogate my enjoyment of it.
I mean, there is a
Bloomburrow
lot...
didn't. Bloomburrow was like, this is gorgeous, I love it.
There is a lot to be said for that. I think art, and one of our very oldest tenets of this podcast is that we do treat Magic the Gathering as an art form.
Yeah.
Art doesn't necessarily need to always be like easy to digest or things that's absolutely your tastes, but it should make you kind of think about it. So in that respect, if we have to give some sort of overarching credit to
it was too good.
This year was incredibly artistic.
Yeah. I guess that's the thing. When you it wasn't a swing and a questionable miss. It was a swing, they knocked it out of the park, and it's like, cool, in my brain it's out of the park. Because they knocked it out of the park and it's gone. It's like, that was great, I'll see you later, bye. Very quickly, mechanics. Offspring, we said we didn't like the name. I know, but also
you feel sick.
Take your kid to work day is phenomenal. I think some of the best. More crime. You going left or right, buddy? Yeah, it's crime in the opposite direction.
Well, like,
you get that crime.
For our US listeners that might be used to sort of seeing their police cars like bomb it through traffic or whatever, UK police cars really do take their time when they reach a T-junction. Like,
let's be honest, English crime is usually less severe than American crime.
there's a great Bill Hicks routine where he talks about UK crime versus US crime, and he talks about UK crime being like, we're the hooligans. Oh, we'll bop you.
Yep.
Oh, we're going to steal your purse, love. And then US crime is like fucking carjacking and like shooting people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, there's a big difference between it's when knife crime advances to gun crime that things really start stepping up a gear.
Anyway, fucking hell.
So Offspring, bring your kid to work days. Some of the best tokens I think we're ever going to see in Magic ever.
Yeah.
Forage, which was a coolish ability, kind of similar to Delve, but slightly different take on it. Cool, but it also worked with food. I've spoken about how I think that's a way to do it. Don't just do a mechanic that's a riff on one mechanic. Do a mechanic that riffs off multiple mechanics, because then you can really start to flex with what you're doing with it and how it works. It's not just self-mill and then you collect evidence. It's like, no, maybe I want to go food, or maybe I want to fill my graveyard, or maybe I want to do both. Who knows? Who cares? Valiant, cool target things, heroic, but better,
I didn't
but
even
also worse.
remember Valiant.
It's basically heroic, and I feel like it's fine, whatever. Expend, I think, is probably a cool mechanic, but it was weird within this set when you're spending a bunch of mana. I'd like to see that in a place like Regatha, where it's like fire mages, and the more mana they use, the more erratic and volatile things. Expend would have been really cool to see on an animal that's going a bit too hard on Magic and is becoming a Calamity Beast.
Well, do you know what that would have been a good... They could have done a one-off. You know, they've started this trend, which I think is actually really good for this year, and they started with Kellen, is that they've started doing like the one-off mechanic to really highlight a card.
Also to show how the Omen Pass are causing this bleed between
That's a real win for this year, and what they could... I didn't say this at the time, it's only just popped into my head. They should have done one card with Monstrous.
I think the thing that they should have done is they should have probably had more cross...
Didn't like that idea?
No, because I'm agreeing with you, because the reason I think it works is because these sets are all going to be played with each other anyway. And then you're trying to say that not only are the sets playing with each other, but the world is playing with each other. But you don't have enough of a cross... And it's not like you can turn around and be like, oh, we don't want to cause confusion. People don't know what sets the people... It's like, everything's a single set now. It's not even like you can be confused what block things are in. This is your way of making blocks without making blocks. Is having enough cards that kind of cross-synergize specifically by having the same mechanic. Like... Survival isn't something that should be specific to Duskmourn. Survival could be something that also... Survival in Bloomburrow. The set just before, you've got little critters that are trying to survive against Calamity Beasts.
Yeah.
Why could there have been a little bit of survival in the set?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of cross-pollination, I think, maybe is a trick that they missed a little bit.
They could stitch together standard really well with that.
Exactly, right? And again, if you don't... I guess it's a question then of are you concerned that your players aren't going to understand what you're doing enough? But then if you do adventures across multiple different sets, which is a really weird looking card when it's the only card in the set that does it, if you're okay to do that, then why weren't you okay to do it with other things?
I think people would get it.
Paw print is technically a mechanic, and that's where you get... It's like the new energy, but you have to use it exactly at the time on the cards.
I didn't mind that.
I didn't mind it.
It gives the cards a nice visual identity.
Exactly. It makes the card feel more immersive mechanically through... It's a mechanical flavour marry, right? And it's not used in any other format, or any other card, so cool. Don't think it's going to come up very often, but whatever. And then Gift, which I think was probably the best mechanic of the set.
Really, because a lot of people who are like more Mel-minded think that's one of the worst.
I understand why they might think that, and that's because Gift of Fish can sound a bit weird.
Well, I think it's also giving your opponents any sort of advantage.
Sure, I guess from a strictly mechanical beneficial nature, why would you give someone something unless it's literally the perfect time to do so? But then for me that creates greater mechanical depth, because why would I give my opponent a benefit? It's like, well, because in some circumstances that's the right thing to do, and if you can't work that out yet, get good at the game.
Well, especially, we're going to talk about... do you know what? I was about to apologise for talking about Commander. I'm done apologising for talking about Commander.
We don't play Standard, Andy. What format are we going to talk about?
I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry that Magic is all Commander and EDH. I'm sorry that that's what everyone thinks about. But you know why? Because it's fucking great.
Also, we were ahead of the fucking curve, okay?
Well, we did start playing a little bit before everyone else.
Yes, exactly.
You had to talk me around to it, to be fair. In Commander... Gift is actually like a totally fine mechanic.
It's so cool, because you can gift to one player while doing something to another player, and it creates that kind of political intrigue. 1v1, that doesn't work so well. But that's fine. And again, there are times where gifting something will be the right decision to do. And Gift, I don't mean the way they've used it already, but Gift as a mechanic has a lot of versatility. You could gift 5 life.
Ah.
You know, it's things like that, where they used to have this Invigorate, I think is a plus, gives a creature +4/+4. and it's 2 and a green, but if you control a forest and or if you give your opponent some life, you can cast it for free. And it was one of the initial ideas of where if you give your opponent a little bit of something, you get your spell for free. Now that's really, really strong in certain circumstances, but it's obviously really weak in other circumstances, and that's the kind of mechanical diversity that should be... This card shouldn't just be played this one way. This card has modality, and you need to figure out which one of those modes is better for your specific circumstance. And if that's what the Mells of the World are complaining about with Gift, that just means the Mells of the World need to get better at mechanics, which is supposed to be the thing they're good at.
It's a skill issue.
Exactly, it literally is a skill issue.
There you go. Right, let's move on.
Now the last set. Again, more bannings. We don't care. There's been a lot of random bannings and things that happen.
Been some unbannings.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Grief and Nardu being banned. What a shock. Yeah. Lol. And then we move through to nothing for a little while, and then Duskmorn in September 27th. Now, it's funny. I'll talk about something very quickly off the back of that in a moment, because this is the last big set before we then talk about Foundations.
Yeah.
And Duskmorn is obviously the most recent set to come out for us, because Foundations kind of just happened in the background. There's not a big story to look about.
It's odd talking about Foundations as part of 2024, because it absolutely is, but it's also going to be part of 2029.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I want to talk... When we get to it, I want to talk about that as well, because I feel like it's a very interesting placement of where it is and what it might mean for the... Like, it might be...
Foundations is still going to be printed, Nathan, by the time I'm 39.
Okay, when people don't know how old you are, that's not super cool or impressive.
Oh, I'm 34.
There we go. I know, it's weird, right? And this is why when I say, like, is it actually not just lazy for them to go, for the next 5 years, these are all the black cards you're going to get?
By the time I'm 39, I might regret the fucking Magic the Gathering tattoo.
Don't buy your Bloodthirsty Conqueror now. It's going to be £2 in 2029. You know? So this is the last big set, and I think we're still kind of trying to get over the whiplash that was Bloomburrow into Duskmorn. And I think for a set that was so, in my mind, again, this idea of Bloomburrow being this perfect thing that it then just kind of settled down, and because it was perfect, I didn't need to interrogate it or keep it in my mind or criticise it or find fault in it. I was like, this is perfect, I love it, cool, it's done. With Duskmorn, I'm still kind of sat there going, shit, did I really, really, really like this thing I thought I was going to hate? And do I like it for all of these reasons that I didn't expect?
So hard to process. And I don't think we're the only ones. I don't think we're just saying this for a bit of, like, drama in the podcast. Everything I've read, everything I've watched, everything I've listened to, because fucking I'm obsessed with this game, and I consume content like it's going out of fashion. Even though I've cut my content consumption for Magic in half this year, I still listen to so much of it. Everyone is just going, I just don't fucking know, man. Like, I just don't know.
Isn't it better to have a set that continues to... or at least it forces you to keep investigating your opinions on it than it is... Again, this is the whole Bloomburrow thing of, like, I know I love it, so I don't have to think about it anymore. Whereas with Duskmorn, I have to constantly be like, oh shit, yeah, I did that. I do really like that bit of it.
The horror elements went so hard, and it was so cool. Like, the concept of the plane that is a house that is a demon...
You've hit the nail on the head. The concept, which originally we were like, what the fuck do you mean it's a living house?
Yeah.
Went to, no, it's a house that took over the entire plane.
It's the most magic-y thing.
It's so cool. It's basically, they went, how deep can we go on just a demon being a motherfucker? And they went, oh, we can just go all the way, and it works for the entire set. And everything fell into place. Everything feels right. Like, how can you have an outside sky inside? It's like, because it ate the sky. Yeah, it consumed the sun.
It's a living fucking planet.
That's so interesting. And again, it gives enough information for you to go, that makes sense. And this is, again, we're not talking about the actual cards themselves. We're not talking about artworks. We're not talking about mechanics. But the concepts, the world building was so complete and so well done that you could kind of almost put anything within it and you'd be like, yeah, okay, I don't like that one card, but I love everything that's around it.
But it wasn't just the one card.
No, and this is where I think now we need to be a little bit harsher and interrogate a little bit further, which is the set itself had some massive wins, but as a full set of cohesion, I think it was massively disjointed. The talking telephones, how close to real life, because obviously 60s to 80s horror tropes are modern enough that you can just be like, that's now. So the set feels like it's a just now set. Even though it has this fantastical element, none of the fantastical elements are really seen. Like, you don't really see, like, the elven fucking woods, you know, when there were elven woods. You just see them as survivors dealing with weird crude technology that's a toaster.
Yeah, I mean, so... I think this is another thing where they maybe just this year of Magic and potentially for the next year and a half whilst they sort their shit out, they've maybe just completely misjudged. Maybe just completely, it doesn't really work, but I think they've misjudged what their player base really likes. And I think, again, I don't want to keep saying the memification because it makes me sound like I'm 70 years old, which we've already established I'm not. I'm half that age. But it's like they've gone, people really love making jokes about things or memes about things or playing like with twee concepts about things. So let's put in the fucking Air Force Ones. Let's put in the cheerleader. Let's put in the Ghostbusters and all this kind of shit. But I think
let's put in a bloody TV.
Yeah, but I think what they've missed is people like making those jokes themselves.
Yeah.
This was the problem with a lot of the unsets towards the end because I don't believe they're going to make another one.
It was the do you get it?
The do you get it?
Do you get it?
And yeah, Wizards, we fucking get it. Like what they should have doubled down. They should have had they've have allusions to the idea that this is an Earth. How much more interesting would it have been is if you looked through the card gallery, you saw something like Fanatical Cheerer, or like we all said all it would have taken was a different kind of a name, like like Haunted Bat.
Kylam got away with this with like the homunculuses being the referees.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh, okay, that's
the
an in-world
to
fitting.
Things, and just making your audience do that one step to be like, oh, it's their fucking cheerleaders. Hang on a minute. Is this about as near to Earth as Magic sets can get? Instead of just being like in a fucking suburb with a white picket fence and a Ford fucking T in the front garden.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like we don't need to be told it's Earth.
Yeah, I do feel like they could have gone further, or I think they would have had artistic license to go further, and I'm glad they didn't. But it's little things like I'll look at cards like I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of the survival guys, and it's just a nerd with glasses and everything. I'm looking at it, I'm like, that feels like fan art. It feels like concept art.
Because it's the kind of thing someone would do out of fandom.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like a Magic card. It feels like someone troping on a Magic card. And the thing is, you don't need to trope on your own thing.
Yeah.
Your own thing should be its own thing.
Yeah.
I think the balance for that is that there were so many good elements to it that I can forgive baseball bat, I can forgive chainsaw and saw, I can forgive all of those things because as a concept, the play means more to me than the cards that were in it. When we're doing a review of the set, and I have to consider which cards I'm going to buy and whether or not they feel like they fit the aesthetic of the deck and things like that. Cool, it's very easy to be super critical. When I look about it objectively, taking the Mel side out of things, I think from a Vorthos point of view, I'm really glad that Duskmourn exists. I think it's a fantastic addition to the multiverse of Magic. I would be interested to see how it goes where it's not just trying to trope Earth, or it's not trying to represent Earth tropes, and it can kind of go a little bit further, and then it becomes this fully transitioned, like, demonic setting that can then... You don't need to then reset the base level of this is what it used to be. We already now know what it used to be. It's no longer that. It's gone full whack. And then you can really push it into, like, Hellraiser levels, even though I know Hellraiser is literally something like the Cenobites are even troped in there already. I feel like you can really push it beyond, back into this is no longer very specifically representing something that we're already aware of, you know?
I think, so it's funny enough, it's actually a card I showed you today that I bought for one of my decks, but the card is Victor Valvagoth's Seneschal, which is not a card name you can say when you're pissed. So that is a card which, on both of the arts, because the showcase and the regular artwork, shows a very normal-looking dad character, because he's the dad of Marina Vendrell, who's one of the main characters in the story, who is a cult leader, and he's wearing a silly moth hat and silly moth robes, because he's in the cult of Valvagoth. And that is such a... When you look at cult culture in the real world, and specifically, no shade on the US, but like US cult culture, because that's what really is famous for it, where it is just like normal people from the suburbs who get this kind of weird conspiracy in their brain, and like the way that cults formulate, and you look like, oh, like... Mary from the corner shop is now wearing like a tinfoil hat.
Is it like the Heaven Sent group or whatever, where they all thought that a meteorite was going to take them to the afterlife, so they all committed suicide together?
I mean, there's loads,
20 strong.
There's loads of examples of that,
and they all just look like normal.
But they're normal people. But that card. So what I'm trying to get at is that card does not stand out to me, despite the fact that in both the artworks, Victor has like a dad beard with little round glasses and a very nondescript outfit that you could find on Earth. I didn't look at those cards and was like, well, that's just a reference to like 70s cults in America. What I went was like, yeah, that makes sense within the context of the story because Valvagoth is a demon that is real in Magic. But then when you have the magic ghost sucker gun, I'm like, well, they're just doing Ghostbusters. Like, weirdly, the more magic-y thing that was more obviously a reference to something tropey was less interesting.
The more it takes it out of it, yeah. I guess there's the idea of like how much magic do you need to be there to be in a set before it feels too diluted. And I guess that's the question mark, right? Because I don't think it's so egregious when you add the whole thing together because you've got, like the overlords and you've got the glimmers and you've got the fears and that kind of thing, and that all kind of works for me. I think, and I agree, the other human side of things is the side of Magic that I don't like anyway. Like, I don't care about the humanistic side. One of the reasons why Lorwyn's one of my favourite sets. It's one of the only sets that doesn't have humans in it. And even then, I look at the fucking Kithkin, I'm like, I don't care about hobbits either. And that's just me. It's fine. But I do think that, it was a real push-pull, and I feel like if I take just the bad elements of Dustmourne, it's one of the worst sets in a fair while at being a believable Magic set. But then I look at the other side of the best bits, the story side of it, and it feels like one of the more interesting Magic stories to come out in the last couple of years.
I think it's a really well-loved setting, and I think if you look at all the sets across the year, I think Ravnica maybe got a bit of a raw deal for it not really being Ravnica, despite my feelings about it being the correct place for that novel. I think Thunder Junction is a completely unloved and totally cynical setting. And if any fucking of the story design team or the world building team are listening to this, they can prove me wrong, fine. I feel like they couldn't have given a shit. But then you look at Bloomburrow Dustmourne, and those are two planes that I think you can tell people really loved them for whatever reason they were doing it. And despite all the cheesy cheerleader bollocks, I think people really were invested in making that a thing. And it shows.
Yeah. They feel like genuine works of art rather than cash grabs.
Yeah, agreed.
Which is which is very telling, and it's kind of interesting that that's how the year went. It feels like how the cynicism of the Magic community is that it should have been flipped.
Yeah,
it feels like those would have more integrity, but the more integrity is happening now. I think Ether Drift might fall more into the murders and outlaw side of things. Do you think? I think it runs the risk of doing exactly what Outlaws did, of where it just goes, hi, this guy's now an engineer on an NASCAR racetrack.
Now that... Okay, we're drifting a little bit into 2025.
Hey, we're drifting.
I think... Ether Drift is like they're saying, this is nuts, and we're going to really do something nuts. Whereas Outlaws was like, it's cowboys, guys.
Yeah. They blinkered themselves with that set in
Whereas
every
Ether Drift
way
is like,
possible.
yeah, okay, fine. They've got the worst set symbol ever. Yes, they've stuck Duretti in a fucking leather vest, and now he's a greaser.
So true.
However,
we've also got Muruganda having all these really cool.
It's like a
the world building is
smorgasbord.
really
Like,
cool.
yeah, like I think whatever team is designing these Omen Path things, it's almost like they went, yeah, well, we did this with like Outlaws. Oh, but we get to go really nuts.
Go deep, and it's also spread instead of being very specific and
isolated. Yeah, they're not going to one place that's a boring ass plane.
No, they're going to multiple different
everywhere.
places, and then they're making all of the things very interesting that are now everything seems cool. We'll talk about it more next year.
We'll talk about it in 12 months' time.
Yeah. Okay, so the last set really to talk about is Foundations.
Ooh, baby.
So Foundations released on November 15th, so it's only, 4 weeks ago. And then obviously it also released a Jumpstart alongside it. So my reservation with Foundations, now I've got, 4 weeks worth of perspective, even though it feels a lot longer, because obviously spoiler season and everything, is that it feels, again, it's the set that's going to be printed for the next 5 years. It's everything that Magic is. But instead of leading the year with that, and saying this is Magic going forwards, it almost feels like they're tucking it into the end of this year, and it's kind of like, hey guys, remember what Magic really is? Cool, well ignore that because we're gonna do some crazy shit next year. And I feel like I'm really stuck with, I don't know why I have this kernel of doubt in my gut of where I can force good intention into this product, but I can't help but feel like all of the evidence I can think of makes it feel like it's a lazy approach to kind of satisfy what they think Magic players will be, which is fatigued of non-Magic Magic. So they went, hey, here's some really magical Magic. But instead of having it as their banner for next year and being a banner for 2025, it's tucked into the bookend of the last set and going, hey, just in case you thought we weren't also doing something for you, here's a bone before we jump straight into something else again. And I don't know why I feel like that, but that's kind of where where my gut instinct settles into, because again, I really like the set. I think it's really cool. We've spoken about it already, but at the end of the day, it is a core set. And it's not got Modern Horizons 3 levels of power that keeps me wanting to reinvest in it. It's got a very cool. It's very cool conceptually, but I think the reality of it is that it is still just a core set that will eventually be very boring, and especially after you've seen the same cards for 5 years. Like, no cards are interesting 5 years on.
Yes, I agree.
And especially when it's a set that's already going to be a little bit dampened and diluted by the fact that it is an actual core set, not a quote-unquote core set, I think might hold it back a little bit. I haven't got enough perspective on it, because again, it's only just recently come out, but the fact I'm already semi-disparaging of it already, and I don't like the fact that it gets tucked in at the end of the year. Like, what's the product for next year going to be of this? I know we're getting 6 fucking sets, and it's going to be whatever. Oh no, we don't know what the last set of the year is for next year. It's the only set they haven't told us. Though. Yeah, but they haven't told us what it's going to be yet. So again, it's curious to think that they would bookend the end of the year with this big thing, instead of having it being the pioneering first set of the next set. I think you could have got away with bookending 2025 with Ravnica remastered and Innistrad remastered. Have that be the year of remastering, and then next year we do all new things. Here's a new core set we haven't done in 5 years. Here's all of these new different universes beyond places we're going to. We're going to space. All of that could have felt like one coherent year. To start another year off with a remastering, which is probably going to be more exciting than Foundations, because it's only got a month or so of being opened and played before we're now on to the next thing. Like, Foundations is always going to be there, and it's a good backdrop and a good foundation, but it's no longer the new thing already. It's no longer this brick shining star. Yeah,
I actually don't want to talk about Foundations too much, because I think it doesn't really belong to this year. It belongs to just Magic for the next period.
Yeah.
What I will say is, in a positive way, it does definitely show that with a year of having a bit of a weird tonal shift, and next year knowing that it's going to be 50-50 UB and Magic IP.
And then the Magic IP is also going to be really weird. It's going to be a set that takes place across multiple different planes with cars, which is still a new enough thing that it's kind of weird. New Capenna, I think, was the first time we got limousines and things like that. Sure. Automobiles. And obviously we're going to space. So even the Magic side of things next year, I think Tarka is the only thing that's going to feel maybe down to earth. And that's the culmination of the Dragonstorm arc. Yeah. So is anything next year going to feel settled?
So I think that Foundations is the proof that they do still have the space to do magic-y magic.
Yeah.
So I guess from a Flavour perspective, lovely.
I guess then that my counterpoint to that is that if it is only once every 5 years, I'm glad that they stuck the landing and it's a really, really cool set, but it is then cool, but that is all we're going to get for base level Magic for 5 years.
Llanowar Elves is going to be a fucking standard for 5 years.
That's crazy, right?
Nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. And maybe that's what people want. We kind of drifted by it very quickly, but let's quickly pull back to mechanics for Duskmourn. We had Eerie, which is essentially Constellation, but it also triggers for rooms. Whatever. Survival, if your creature is tapped at the end of combat, cool things you can do with it. That's fine. It's a combat-based mechanic. Impending, I think we agree that's probably one of the more interesting ones. It was on the smallest amount of cards, being, enchantments that come into play as creatures that can't attack or block and eventually can attack and block. I think it's probably got limited scope in what it can be used for. And then Manifest Dread, the second morph mechanic in a year that's actually still different. I think Manifest Dread is infinitely better as a mechanic, how it plays. I think is better than Disguise or Cloak. I still think Disguise and Cloak sound better as mechanics than Manifesting Dread does. It's kind of interesting how they, the wording on things like, Offspring we didn't like particularly either. I think both things need to work coherently together to make a mechanic that actually feels right. Quote unquote right, when it sits in your magical belly and it goes, oh yeah, that makes sense, that works. Quickly looking back then, what do you think the best new mechanic of the year is?
Oh my
So, quick run through. We've got Disguise, Cloak, Suspect, Collect Evidence, Spree, Plot, Saddle, Offspring, Forage, Gift, Valiant, Expend, Eerie, Survival, Impending, and Manifest Dread.
Oh my god.
It's kind of funny that most of the sets have at least 4 new mechanics.
I'm going to go for Spree.
You like the idea of being able to have a card that doesn't do anything, but then you keep going, boom, add the mana in to do that, like the kicker, the true kicker variant.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like that. I'm gonna go. I really like the idea of plot, but I think it's ultimately going to be gift. I think gift is the most interesting for me in terms of its viability and what it can do. Fuck you, Mel's, with your doesn't work in 1v1. I don't play 1v1. It doesn't matter to me.
Wow. That's fucking EDH elitism at its best.
Oh, yes. Okay, right. So we're obviously going to want to talk about art and artists. I think...
God. I've just discovered my top 5's turned into a top 7.
We're going to very quickly, again, just a little retrospective across all of the alt treatments that we've had this year.
Oh, yeah.
Not including the ultra rare foiling treatments, like the Galaxy foils and the Surge foils and the whatever the fucking... Now we're Yu-Gi-Oh! I did that with Jazz Hands, just in case you didn't know. No, just to make it extra fancy. So, for Murders of Karlov Manor, we had 3. Technically, the Ravnica City border, as we've said, was already used for a couple of cards in Aftermath, but we also then got it on, I think it was 3 cards. We got a Niv Mizzet on Aurelia, and I can't remember the third card it was on, but I think it was only on 3 of them. We then also got the Dossier treatment, which is like the Pages kind of one that we kind of had a bit of pushback on, and then what is known as the Magnified alt treatment.
Taser, I think it was the other one.
Taser was the other one. And then you have the Magnified treatment, which is the super high realistic cards, which I think, in retrospect, I think is a really cool looking cards, so it made it feel more grounded in the set, whereas the Dossier pulled you out completely and it made it full...
Yeah, wild.
2 very varying different, massively varyingly different art styles. That's going to become a trend. In Outlaws of Thunder Junction, we had the Wanted posters, as well as the Breaking News. And then technically, because they all rolled it into one, the Big Score had the Vault Frame artworks as well. The Vault Frame is basically just the same as any other, trying to be slightly fancier thing without going too far.
Was it Inventions?
It was a little bit, but way less finessed. It was way more reductive. Saying that, I think also the Wanted posters and the Breaking News from an artistic point of view are also reductive.
But I actually think they really worked.
They both worked really well. Yeah. I think the Wanted poster, the only thing that didn't work was that it kind of had the Dossier effect, but it also looked kind of digital. It looked like a computer trying to do paper.
The thing I think is the difference is that the newspaper Wanted poster style stuck the landing with the art styles they chose for it, whereas the dossiers just seem to have like normal magic realism.
Yeah, I agree. The dossier should have been like a sketch of someone or something like that. Yeah, I agree completely. I think the Breaking News, I think I like Breaking News more than most people. I don't mind that it's all the same Prosper thing. I don't mind that you can't necessarily very easily tell what colours they are. It's better than the Dossier treatment. The Dossier treatment is probably the worst offender for what the fucking what colour is this card? Yeah. How am I supposed to cast it? And I think the Vault Frame was fine, but very forgettable. I didn't even realise it was one. Then we go to Bloomburrow. We had the field notes, which was only on a few. So what you usually find is you have one art treatment that's on a smaller selection of cards.
Oh yeah, field notes.
Yeah, so that was all the Calamity Beasts had people documenting in their little sketchbook. Again, I think we're both.
They were very much like the
in agreement of where that works really well.
The Da Vinci sort of blueprints for things like lightning grooves and stuff.
Yeah, that was another really cool version. Again, it works to have these things that feel less polished than the final product of a card, because we know the amount of time that goes into digitally making up these cards, and the more you do with it, if anything, the more it takes me away, because the more it just makes them all feel like generic normal cards.
These feel like someone in the game made this card. It was the same way that the spellbook ones for Strixhaven, they were like, no, these are pages from the books in the biblioplex, and you're like, yeah, I buy that.
That flats. It's why I don't mind the faithless looting artwork that everyone despises. I'm like, but that's someone's interpretation of what the spell does, and then weren't a very good. Sorry, not saying a very good artist, but they're not it's not an artistic thing that most people like, and I'm like, cool, I like that because it creates a diversity. It's not just the same everywhere. And then the woodland treatment. Cool. That's just basic. Back to basic. This is how we would look at the plane if it was a little bit more crittery. This is what Magic the Gathering cards would look like if they were from Bloomburrow.
It's another line of actually doing like leaves in the things is good. So you have what the fuck am I saying there? the autumnal frame for Midnight Hunt.
Yes.
And then the original alt frame for original Eldraine.
Yes.
These
exactly.
More natural framings with it's trees and leaves and pumpkins. They're just way better than everything else.
If you have magic cards and they go to Bloomburrow and they become animalified, obviously they don't become animals, they become plantified, and that makes
sure.
sense to me. And then there was technically also the Imagine Critters. I think
God.
I don't think we've seen any of them in person, but not only was the art style exceptionally pushed, but that kind of that gold leafing effect around them.
Yeah.
Cool. It's a bit overdone, but it's also something to chase that's kind of cool. Fair enough, whatever. I'm not going to criticise. And then when we get to Dustmore, we had the Paranormal, which, as I said, is kind of similar to the Pip-Boy framing of where it had that digital kind of like static effect. I think it works with a few of them. When we start looking at artworks going forwards, spoilers, we didn't actually look at all arts in this. We just looked at regular card artwork. And I think there's quite a few of them that worked really well with this paranormal effect. Not just the framing, but the art within them as well. Yeah, the Lurking Evil, which is where a bunch of the cards had a shadowy guy in it that doesn't normally come in it. So it's,
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so some of the cards have the presence there, and some of them don't. And the regular card doesn't, and you have to just assume that it's there. And then in other ones, they're actually lurking and they're there. Which is quite cool, because you'll go through the card, you'll find one, you'll be like, wait, I don't remember that being on there.
See, that's kind of cute.
And it isn't, exactly. That's quite cute. It's just creating another variant. It's the Teferi, the 4 different Teferi Master of Time effect thing from that Corsair, whatever. And then you've got the Mirror Monsters, which is only a select, I think, like 12 or so cards, where it was all real close up. So it's things like, I think the Doomsday Executioner, you're seeing him in the glasses of the person he's attacking, and you only see the reflection just as it's approaching. And you have a few others where you see like the hand of the monster coming at the... Now that's quite cool, because it puts you in the perspective of the creature. Instead of it being a picture of the creature, it's like, no, this is you as the creature. Which is really, really cool. The idea of you play the thing and you've got the victim on your card already.
Dead by Daylight.
Yes, exactly. And then you also have the double exposure, what you were kind of referring to earlier with Victor, where it has the artwork and then it has like an extra, like almost like silhouette over the top of it, where it's supposed to be this idea of when you take pictures back in the day, you could accidentally overlap 2 different pictures together by not changing the film, which is quite cool. I think at that point you've got too many, because you've got 4 distinctly different things, and also on certain cards you might, with the Lurking Evil, is technically like a 5th option, because you have the regular version, the Lurking Evil version, blah 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 blah. Out of all of them, I mean, I always like the ones that kind of push the envelope more than any others. I think the paranormal one's really, really cool. I also think that the magnified ones, it's enough extra, and the artwork feels like it's enough of a step up, instead of being like, say, for example, the Field Notes one, where the art style gets more aggressive and it feels more sketchy and it doesn't feel like it's hyper-realistic. I liked the fact that the magnified ones go, actually, let's make this even more hyper-realistic. This might as well be a picture. It might as well be a photo. You know, because when you're trying to investigate a scene, you need to see it properly instead of a theory of it or a representation of it.
See, I think I like the Bloomborough frame for the reasons that I just espoused.
Yep.
And I think the double exposure from Dustmore looked really striking.
Yeah, big fan of both. Cool, let's get into actual artists and art.
So, I think what we did was we looked at the Scryfall, because on Scryfall there's a functionality that you can actually look at things in the order of the artist's name, not necessarily the card number or anything. Very useful. And actually, I think I would, if anyone is looking through Scryfall, just do it randomly on, like, if you're looking through the cards of the set, because then you get to see multiple cards done by the same artist, and you can see their style much clearer, and it actually kind of gives a sort of sense of identity to them. We looked at all the mainline sets, and Modern Horizons 3, and Foundations / Jumpstart. Mm-hmm. So we're not looking at the whole gamut of the entire year.
I think it didn't catch, as I said, it didn't catch any of the alt arts, but it would catch things like Secret Lairs.
Yeah.
And things like that.
So 2,800 cards or something that we looked through. Yeah. Lots of artists. Yeah. And my God, some of these artists had a hell of a year. She's not in my top 5, so I think I don't even... Top 5 is something I've thrown out literally as we've been recording. We're going to do our Artist of the Year as in, like, this is a great run of cards they did. And then I think I've picked an Art of the Year. Have you done that?
I have my
Right, we'll have to say that at the same time. I want to do that at the same time. But there's an honourable mention that I'm going to give to Valera Lutfalina, who did 25 individual artworks.
That's insane.
So they did 2 schemes for the scheme product that came out this year.
Yeah, it does.
And they did a couple of double-face cards.
Can I just say the schemes as a whole... fucking stunning.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. And
in their repertoire are things like Voya. They've got the new Tomic. They've got Spring Heart and Tuco. Enduring Vitality. Valley Rockcaller. Like, it's just absolutely... I mean, to do that many
cards... The Valley
Rockcaller
is really, really pretty.
So, special shout out to them. All right. Do you want me to give just a quick breakdown of who my top ones are, and then maybe my top artists?
Absolutely, it's better than us just jumping between. Yeah.
All right. So I think I've picked my top artist of the year. So I'm gonna work backwards on my phone. So special shout outs go to Tiffany Terrell, who did Breya, Ethereum Sculptor, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, Meat Hook Massacre 2, and Territory Colour. Very, very cool. Sam Gay had a banger of a year.
Yeah.
Deadly Cover-Up, Macard Reconstruction, Portent Calamity, Nocturnal Hunger, Zazzacap's Brew. They're not my artists of the year because I think there's like Dominic Mayer, for example, I've not put in any of my lists because I'm such a Dominic Mayer simp.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved meeting them at MagicCon Amsterdam this year. We haven't spoken about MagicCon Amsterdam in this podcast. So that's kind of a given that I love them. I think Sam Gay's maybe in that one as well. Justina Jura. I know this is one you want to talk about as well.
That's good. I'm glad you have because I just have. It's the only one that I put a Scryfall HTML in because I was just like, I just need to see it all again.
Person of Interest, Twinferno, which is a reprint. We have Hi-Fi Trickster, Holy Cow, Callier of the Vast, the kind of new artwork. Mild-Mannered Librarian, Coerced to Kill.
Coerced to Kill. Can we pause for a moment?
Yeah.
This doesn't look like a Justina Jura artwork. This looks like it could be more on the Dominic Mayer side of things. And it's so... This is the thing that stood out to me because I had this next to... I think this... side by side with Demand Answers, and they are two radically different stylistic art pieces.
But they both use light points.
Light points in general, she does so well, but they're so good. It's not like, oh, this is like your very specific art theme and style. Like you have varied art style within your own repertoire.
Yeah, agreed.
Which is so much more impressive than just seeing the same exact style again and again and again. Which I like. Again, if you make artwork that I like, I will always look at your artwork and like it.
These pop, and that's the benefit of looking at it through the artist's names, especially if you're looking through the entire year, because people you do stand out. Crumb and Get It, Demand Answers, Drag Under. Obviously, they don't pick the card names, so whatever. I think, oh god, who's going to be my artist? Dimitri Burmak had a great year. I'm not going to run through all their cards, but they did a fuck ton of them. Oh, who's going to be my artist of the year? Eli Mignana.
Yep.
Psychic Whirl. They did Push Pull, Season of the Bold, Return Favour, Treacherous Grieve, Unwanted Remake. Really dark, like Nils Harm levels sort of style.
It's exactly Nils Ham level, yeah. It's somewhere between Nils Ham and, again, the Dominic Mayer style of where it has that kind of almost flat quality.
Well,
Season of the Bold.
Yeah, really, really good.
Oh my lord.
Talking about flat quality artwork, we have Jeremy Wilson with Airtight Alibi and Insidious Roots, which were two cards that we picked out in our episode for Murders. And then Intruding Soul Rager, which they really lent into the kind of blue-red 3D glasses effect.
That's the one where it's the blue. Yeah, that's so good.
And Unnerving Grasp. They also had Gyre's Inferno, but that's a reprint. Right, I think I've got my artist of the year. Looking through it all.
Well, let me talk about.
You talk about yours, then you talk about your artist of the year, because then I'll talk about mine.
Okay, cool. So you already covered Eli Minaya, which is good. Fernando Falcone is new this year. They've only done about 5 artworks, most of them for Duskmorn. They did Under the Skin and Fear of Abduction. It's another slightly textured, less hyper-realistic art style that I really enjoy. I'd like to see what they're going to do over the next couple of years. Gina Matarazzo, again, new this year.
Really good.
I think she's going to be a Lorwyn artist. They have the Rabbit token. They did Three Tree Mascot, and they also did Filling the Pantry. Again, a kind of softer, flatter style, but it almost has a book style, like a children's book style, which I think only works in certain environments. I think the Rabbit token is gorgeous. I just really enjoy it. It's really endearing art quality. And again, when you look at it side by side with something like Duskmorn cards, it's quite nice to just have some pretty artwork in Magic instead of everything being scary and jaggedy. Aldo Dominguez was going to be my artist of the year because of War Leader's Cool.
Oh, very,
that was
very
going to be
good.
my artwork of the year, but I just think you've reminded me of another one that I think that is better. Chris Rallis. I don't normally prefer hyper-realistic arts, but you did Shulgengar.
Chris Rallis is a banger every year.
And Dewdrop Cure.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the little mouse with his little whiskers, and he's got the little dewdrop. Oh, it's just that is it's probably the cutest artwork of the year for me. I think that covers everyone that I wanted to honourably mention.
Right, okay. So my artist of the year, not the art of the year, although that might be the same. Who knows?
Okay.
My art. So I'm going to do artist. You're going to do artist.
Oh shit. Okay, no, I kind of like showed my hand.
Okay.
No, my artist of the year.
So my artist of the year is Danny Schwartz.
Interesting.
Danny Schwartz is I'm going to show you the thing. Aftermath analyst. Expel the unworthy. Frilled spark shooter, Into the Flood, and Shadow of the Second Sun.
Yeah, very cool artworks.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I've picked them, I think we spoke about Aftermath analyst, but when I look at these cards, I definitely spoke about Shadow of the Second Sun when we did Modern Horizons 3. I don't necessarily think that they're any technically more proficient than the other artists we've spoken about. When I look at their cards, to me they seem like Magic cards. And I know that sounds so basic bitch, but if I was to flick through my collection and look at these things, they're the kinds of things that I would show people, being like, look at this cool arcane game that I'm playing. And I think that's where my artistic things lie. Some of the Magic realism stuff is obviously impeccable. And we're talking about some of the other artists like Justin Jura, who, yeah, absolutely, like, they fucking smash it out of the park in terms of like their like use of light and like their kind of wild ideas. But I don't know, for me, Danny Schwartz just has this kind of real key into doing sort of simple ideas with interesting colour palettes that you just don't see in other artworks. Like this kind of double shadow with Shadow of the Second Sun, this Aftermath analyst with these kind of weird circles they're looking at. Into the Flood is just cute as fuck. I don't know. I think they've nailed what they understood the assignment, as the kids say.
So you already kind of said it as your honourable mention, but for me it was Justina Dura.
Oh my god!
Like
so good.
The varied quality is the big thing for me. It's not just about having an art style that I like, that I know I'm always going to like. Again, we'll come back to someone like Dominic Mayer. And that's not to say that Dominic Mayer doesn't have variety. It's just within the cards that Magic chooses to display and use, they always kind of fall within the same kind of remit. Whereas with Justina, I look at some cards, I look at, like, you know, say Miku Spark, for example, which is the take on Chandra's Ignition, and then I look at Coerce to Kill, and then I look at, I don't know, say Dolmen Gate, and they're all so varied in the story they're telling and the way they're telling it, you know? And then my ultimate card for her, I mean, even things like Haunted Library, I look at Haunted Library and I wouldn't have thought it was... Have you given me a wrong card? You have, that's Justina Gill, you liar! Cool, good, well, I mean... Maybe I shouldn't have just listed Justina then. But Iron Man. I hate to say it, we didn't mention it. It's the only secret lair I got. I didn't just get it because I like artifacts, I do. But the artwork for it is absolutely insane. It's the perfect mix of futuristic with magical feeling. And I know that Iron Man isn't a magical-based character, but this makes him feel like he is. It
makes Iron Man fit within the Magic universe.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Cool. Art of the year.
All right, on the count of three.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Insidious
Glimpse the
Roots.
Impossible. Damn it!
I knew you were going to go for Glimpse the Impossible, which is why I didn't. I knew you were going to go for it.
Insidious Roots is a banger.
This is the all-art Insidious Roots for me, by the way.
Oh.
I know. Only because when you said it, I was like, that's the artwork I remember buying and being like, I opened a second copy of it like 2 days after I bought it, and it was a foil version. I was like, you know what? I'm happy. Because this card is insanely pretty. It is the ultimate... I use the alternate art frame to the best of my ability. One moment, sorry, I literally can't type for shit. Monstre. I am not very good at foreign languages. It's also the same person who did Analyze the Pollen, Assemble the Players, and Deadly Complication for the alternate artwork style. It's just super indulgent. It fits so well into the magnifying glass.
Glimpse the Impossible, I don't disagree with you, but Glimpse the Impossible for me, it's slightly ironic because although I suppose you could say it fits into the theme of Modern Horizons 3 because it's the moment that Gisela understands the power of Emrakul during the events of Shadows over Innistrad Eldritch Moon and becomes an Eldritch Angel. It's the literal moment you see the
moment of conversion.
Yeah, the spark of knowledge in her eyes, the Emrakul tendrils breaking through her hands, and the kind of shocked, like, into the unknown face. I suppose it's ironic that it's not a story moment that's either new or from a story set this year, which is why I feel a little bit bad picking it. But my God,
it just knocks it out of the bloody park.
Justine Jones, I spoke to her a lot at Magic Con Amsterdam. You also got this card signed. Yeah, we both got this card signed.
I was lucky enough to get a good 10-minute stand and
talk.
Oh
man, that's 9 minutes more than I did, because she could fuck me, she had a line because of this card. I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone loves Justine Jones for her other treatments, but she only had 2 cards this year, but these were ones in a main set. As
the other was like Predatory Urge, or isn't it something, the werewolf?
Horrific Assault, which is the werewolf, But the whole card, the whole picture frame is taken up with this moment. It's either hair, feathers, or like the body of the angel. The story, the quite well-known story now, because she's done quite a lot of interviews about this, and we've spoken about it, where she actually drew this angel with white hair, because she just got told, do an angel with eldritch knowledge pouring out of them. And this is what she produced, by and large. And they went, do you reckon you could actually change the hair colour to red? They didn't tell her that it was going to be Gisela. She actually assumed, because she plays Magic, so she has a sort of passing understanding of the different characters. She thought this was Aurelia.
Yeah.
And then when they were like, no, this is Gisela, and they told her the storyline, it's like, fuck me. The fact that she did this artwork and nailed it without being
knowing
told the story... And just, again, it's a flat art style. I know it's a very comic booky art style. Maybe this is just me just leaning into what I like. But I think as a card, with the red card frame and the little Emrakul...
It's one of the nicest foils. Like, that specific art style and that specific card, what they've done with it, the way it pops. Because in certain cards, you'll see it and you'll do the little thing where you shine it and it will have certain inflections. And you'll be like, okay, that either hit the mark or sometimes it's like, oh my god, that looks insane. With this card, it's like the most pretty. It pops so hard.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. I kind of took... I already knew that you were going to go with Justine Jones at some point for one of the artists.
Yeah.
And I even had a moment where I paused and I was like, we've already spoken about this enough this year that I'm going to do something else. And originally it was going to be War Leader's Call was going to be my answer, because not only was it a slightly different art style to the rest of his work, but I think that for me, I look at it, I'm like, it's Ravnica being told as a process, you know, like, and I really like that kind of art style. But yeah, like Justine Jones.
For me...
She's got a lot of work coming up as well, which I was able to kind of glimpse out of her. I can't say anything else, but there's some very cool stuff that's going to be happening in the future with her.
For me, if you talk about Magic 2024, this is the card image that pops into my head.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Well, that does it.
Yeah. We can talk about next year.
We'll talk about next year.
Overall, how do we feel? Are we happy with how Magic went this year?
No, I'm stressed by it.
Right?
I'm honestly stressed out by it.
They really took some wild swings, and I still don't think... And again, this is why I think the Foundations at the end of the year was a great little thing. Going, oh, no, don't worry. I'm like, yeah, but you gave me reason to worry. And that in and of itself is worrying.
Although I haven't played maybe as much as I'd like, the Magic I've played this year has been some of the best Magic of my life, including playing in Amsterdam, but also just the individual games that I've played. The last 3 or 4 sessions I played Magic, I think I've only won 2 or 3 games, but I've had some of the best times playing Magic. Yeah. So that is great. And the best of Magic this year has been some of the best Magic I've ever engaged with. The worst of Magic this year has maybe been like, what the fuck is this game?
It's the first real cracks where you're like, maybe I don't enjoy the way this business model is handling the thing that I love.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with you. I feel like from a gameplay point of view, I very much enjoyed the things that have happened. It doesn't feel like... The only thing I'll say is the first time in Magic, I think properly in my entire life, that I've started to be like, I don't know what is... You can play cards and I'm like, cool. Not only do I'm not entirely sure where that... Not only do I not know exactly what that does, but I'm not entirely sure where that's from.
Yeah.
And it's the first time I've taken my foot off the pedal, because if you don't take your foot off the pedal a little bit, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
There's so much happening at all times. And imagine, I can't imagine being like a digital player where you have alchemy cards, where they just literally make up shit on the spot that utterly ruins the way that the game plays. Like, even within our paper Magic, like there's, you know, I forgot that Eldrazi commander existed, and I didn't keep a hand with 1 mana removal, and now I'm going to lose the game. You know, take out all of that metagaming and mel side of things.
You've been playing our friend Waz, haven't you?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. Take all of that out of it. It's fine, but there are certain... Yeah, it gets to a point where I'm like, I just have to kind of just be like, yeah, cool, everyone's just doing whatever they want. And that's okay. I guess it's supposed to be. That's what I'm supposed to say. But I can't help but think deep down, like, this is only the beginning. You know?
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic for next year. I think they're going to lean into it a bit better. Well,
space, man.
Well, space and cars.
Space and dragons. Space and cars and
dragons in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
It's literally drag racing and dragons. It's great.
Let us know how you feel about 2024 via our X account, Twitter account, at MTFlavouring. My personal Twitter is at AndyManFace. Nathan's yours is...
At the Fox in the Moon.
Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. If you're trying to get us to do a sponsorship with you just because your name has magic in it, I will not reply to your email.
Oh.
We've had 3 sponsorship opportunities where people are like, we think your podcast would be really good for our brand, and it's like some fucking skincare brand with the word magic in it.
Oh, so it's just AI.
Who gives
bullshit.
a fuck? Get out of my life.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Why are you telling me my skin looks bad? Fuck you. How dare you?
Anything else?
No. It was a good year.
It's been an alright year.
I mean, I've enjoyed it personally.
I've had ups and downs.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I have optimism going forwards.
I have optimism
even though I have
too.
regrets looking back.
Oh. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great new year. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you next year.